2 in the morning. The phone rang through the silent apartment. Daniel Ward, a single father, jolted awake. His voice was hoarse. "Hello?" A woman's voice trembled on the other end. "Help me. Please, don't let them find me. Who is this?" I dialed the wrong number. I'm sorry." Then came the sound of muffled crying. He glanced at his little daughter sleeping beside him. He hesitated. Rain pattered against the window. His heart pounded. "Where are you?" Silence for 1 second, then 6 trembling words. "The White House. On the hill." He grabbed his coat, his keys. He had no idea that the woman calling for help was the only daughter of the billionaire who had fired him 3 years ago. Daniel Ward was 36 years old, a single father, a former security systems technician at Vostech Corporation. He had been fired 3 years ago for one simple reason. He had stood up for a coworker. After losing his job, Daniel took on small gigs, installing cameras, working night shifts, anything to support his 7-year-old daughter, Ella. That night, the strange call haunted him. He couldn't sit still. Someone might be in real danger, he thought. He kissed Ella's forehead as she slept. Then he grabbed his jacket and headed into the rain. The drive felt endless. The windshield wipers beat rhythmically against the downpour. The road twisted upward toward the suburbs, toward the white mansion on the hill. When he arrived, the gate was open. Strange. The front door was unlocked. Even stranger. Daniel stepped inside. The hallway lights flickered, on and off, on and off. His footsteps echoed on the marble floor. In the living room, he found her, a young woman, sitting curled up on the floor. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her hands shook as she clutched the broken neck of a wine bottle. "Are you okay?" Daniel asked gently. She looked up. Her voice was flat. "I told you, wrong number. You can leave." "I don't think so," he said. "I used to handle fire alarm systems. I know when someone needs help, and you need help." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she whispered, barely audible, "My name is Isabel Voss." Daniel froze. Voss. The name hit him like a punch to the chest. The daughter of the man who had destroyed his career. The man who had signed his termination papers without a second glance. The man who had built an empire on the backs of people like Daniel. And now, here she was, broken, alone, calling a stranger in the middle of the night. He could have walked away. He should have walked away. But he didn't. "Listen," Daniel said, his voice steady. "I don't know what you're going through, but I know what it's like to feel like the world has turned its back on you." Isabel let out a bitter laugh. "You don't know anything about me." "You're right," he admitted. "But I know this. You called someone. That means part of you still wants to fight." She looked away. Tears streamed down her face. Daniel didn't push. He simply moved around the room. He picked up the broken glass. He poured her a glass of water. He sat down in the chair across from her. Silent. Minutes passed. Finally, Isabel spoke. "They want me to sign everything over. My father's company, his legacy, everything he built." Her voice cracked. "I'm so tired of people pretending they care, tired of being alone." Daniel nodded slowly. "Maybe they don't care, but that doesn't mean you stop caring about yourself." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "You sound like my father. He used to say things like that." "Maybe," Daniel said quietly. "It's because we both believed in something money can't buy. Integrity." The word hung in the air. Isabel stared at him, really looked at him. For the first time that night, she saw him, not as a stranger, not as someone who wanted something from her, but as someone who understood. "Why did you come?" she asked. "You didn't have to." Daniel stood up. "Because someone once told me that the measure of a person isn't what they do when people are watching. It's what they do when no one is." He walked toward the door. "Wait," Isabel called out. He turned. "Thank you," she said softly, "for staying." Daniel gave a small smile. "Thank you for still being here." He left. The door closed behind him. Isabel sat in the silence of the empty house, alone again, but somehow less alone than before. She didn't know it yet. But the man her father had fired 3 years ago had just become the first person in a very long time who didn't want anything from her. And that would change everything. Isabel Voss was 28 years old, the sole heiress to Voss Tech Corporation, a billion-dollar empire. But empires mean nothing when you're alone. Her father had died 2 years ago. Sudden heart attack, no warning, no goodbye. Her mother remarried within 6 months, moved to Monaco, barely called anymore. The White House on the Hill had become a prison, beautiful, empty, silent. That night, Isabel had been trying to call her private driver, someone she paid to be available, someone who would come without questions, but her hands had been shaking. The numbers blurred through her tears. She had accidentally dialed an old number from the company database, a number that belonged to a technician her father had hired years ago to install the security system. Daniel Ward. She had no idea who he was. She had no idea her father had fired him. She only knew that when she said those 6 desperate words, he had come. And that terrified her more than being alone, because people didn't help Isabel Voss without wanting something in return. The next morning, Isabel woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains. Her head pounded. Her mouth was dry. But on her phone, there was a message. If you need someone to check your security system, I still work in the area. Daniel. She stared at the message for a long time. Then for the first time in months, she smiled. 1 week later, Isabel called him. The cameras keep glitching, she said. Can you take a look? Daniel arrived that afternoon. He was professional, polite. He didn't mention that night. Neither did she. He went straight to the control panel in the back office. While inspecting the wiring, he noticed something unusual, a file folder, hidden behind the panel, dusty, old. He pulled it out. The label read, Daniel Ward, case termination. His stomach dropped. He should have put it back. He should have walked away. But before he could, Isabel appeared in the doorway. Did you find something? She asked. He hesitated, then handed her the folder. Isabel opened it slowly. Her eyes scanned the pages. Termination report. Date, 3 years ago. Reason, insubordination and reckless behavior endangering company property. But there was something else, an audio file, attached to the report but marked as deleted. What is this? She whispered. Daniel's jaw tightened. Your father kept records of everything. Play it, she said. You don't need to hear this. Play it. Daniel pressed the button. The speakers crackled to life. A man's voice, panicked. The security gate is falling. Someone move. Daniel's voice, calm, steady. If I don't catch it, it'll crush someone. Don't worry. I can handle it. A loud crash, metal against concrete, screaming, then silence. Isabel's hands trembled. You were hurt. You saved someone. And my father, he fired you. He came to the hospital, Daniel said quietly. He looked me in the eye and said the company couldn't afford bad press, that I had acted without authorization, that I was a liability. Why didn't you fight it? Isabel asked, her voice breaking. Because I had a daughter to feed, and fighting powerful people doesn't put food on the table. Isabel sank into a chair. Tears streamed down her face. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. For my father. For everything. Daniel shook his head. Don't apologize for him. Your father was a good man once. I saw it. But somewhere along the way, he got surrounded by people who told him what he wanted to hear instead of what he needed to hear. And you? Isabel looked up at him. Why are you still here? Why did you come that night? You could have ignored my call. You could have let me. She didn't finish the sentence. Daniel knelt down so they were eye level. Because I know what it's like to feel invisible, he said. To feel like you don't matter. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Not even the daughter of the man who destroyed my life. Isabel broke down. She sobbed. Not the quiet, controlled tears of someone used to hiding pain, but the raw, desperate crying of someone who had been holding it in for too long. Daniel didn't say anything. He just sat there, present, real. When she finally stopped, she wiped her eyes and looked at him. How do you do it? She asked. How do you still believe in people? I don't believe in people, Daniel said simply. I believe in doing the right thing, even when no one's watching, even when it costs you everything. Isabel stared at him. In that moment, something shifted inside her. She had spent her entire life surrounded by people who wanted her money, her name, her power. But this man wanted nothing, and that made all the difference. "Will you help me?" she asked quietly. "Help you with what?" "To be brave, like you." Daniel smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "You don't need me for that. You're already braver than you think. You called for help. That's the hardest part." Isabel nodded slowly. For the first time in 2 years, she didn't feel alone. The next morning, Isabel sat in her father's old study. The room had been untouched since his death. His reading glasses still sat on the desk, his favorite pen, a photo of Isabel at her college graduation. She opened her laptop and began searching through the company's archive files. If her father had kept Daniel's termination report hidden in the house, what else had he hidden? Hours passed. Then she found it. A private folder labeled "Personal Log, Not for Board Review." Her hand shook as she clicked it open. Inside were dozens of voice memos, her father's voice, recording his thoughts late at night when no one else was listening. She scrolled to the date 3 years ago, the week Daniel was fired. She pressed play. Her father's voice filled the room, tired, heavy. "I made a decision today that will haunt me. Daniel Ward saved a man's life. He put himself in danger without hesitation. He's the kind of employee any company should be proud of." A long pause. "But the board demanded I terminate him. They said his actions were reckless, that he created liability, that we couldn't afford the insurance claims or the media attention." Another pause, longer this time. "I should have fought them, but I was weak. I was afraid of losing control. So I signed the papers. I looked that man in the eye at the hospital and I lied to him. I told him he was fired for his own good." Isabel's breath caught in her throat. Her father's voice continued. "The truth is, I fired him to save myself, and I'll never forgive myself for it." The recording ended. Isabel sat frozen. Tears streamed down her face. Her father had known. He had known Daniel was a hero, and he had destroyed him anyway. She called Daniel immediately. "Can you come over, please? I need to show you something." 20 minutes later, Daniel stood in the study. Isabel played the recording. When it ended, the room was silent. Daniel exhaled slowly. "So he knew." "He knew," Isabel whispered. "And it destroyed him. Listen to this." She played another recording, dated 6 months before her father's death. "I've been thinking about Daniel Ward again. I tried to find him, to apologize, to offer him his job back, but he's vanished. Probably changed his number, probably never wants to hear from me again." A bitter laugh. "I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to hear from me either." Another pause. "Isabel asked me yesterday why I seemed so distant. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to say that I'm haunted by the people I've hurt, by the choices I made to protect my ego instead of doing what's right." His voice cracked. "But I didn't, because I'm a coward. And now she thinks I don't care about her. When the truth is, I care so much that I'm terrified of disappointing her the way I've disappointed myself." The recording ended. Isabel was sobbing now, openly, uncontrollably. "He wanted to find you," she said. "He wanted to make it right, too. But he never got the chance." Daniel stood there processing. 1,000 emotions flickered across his face. Anger, sadness, regret. Finally, he spoke. "Your father was a good man who made a bad choice," Daniel said quietly. "That doesn't erase what he did, but it also doesn't erase who he was." "How can you say that?" Isabel asked, her voice breaking. "After everything he took from you?" "Because holding on to anger doesn't bring back what I lost. It just makes me lose more." Isabel looked at him through her tears. "I don't understand how you can be so forgiving." "I'm not forgiving him for his sake," Daniel said. "I'm forgiving him for mine and maybe for yours." She wiped her eyes. "What do you mean?" "Your father spent his last years carrying guilt he never let go of. I won't do that to myself, and I won't let you do it to yourself either." Isabel stared at him. You're a better person than I'll ever be. No, Daniel said firmly. I'm just someone who learned the hard way that bitterness is heavier than forgiveness. She walked over to the window. The White House on the hill overlooked the city below. So much power, so much loneliness. What do I do now? She asked. The board is trying to force me out. They say I'm too young, too emotional, that I don't have what it takes to run my father's company. Daniel joined her at the window. Do you want to run it? He asked. I don't know, she admitted. But I know I don't want them to win. I don't want my father's legacy to be controlled by people who never cared about what he actually stood for. Then fight, Daniel said simply. I don't know how. Yes, you do. You called for help when you needed it. That took courage. Now you need to use that same courage to stand up for what you believe in. Isabel turned to face him. Will you help me? I'm a security technician, Daniel said with a small smile. I don't know anything about corporate boards. You know about integrity, Isabel said. And right now, that's what I need most. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, but on one condition. What? You stop apologizing for your father. He made his choices. You get to make yours. Isabel's eyes filled with tears again. But this time, they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of determination. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing me. Not my money, not my name, just me. Daniel smiled. That's all I've ever seen. That night, Isabel sat at her father's desk. She opened a new document on her laptop. At the top, she typed, Letter to the Board of Directors. For the first time in 2 years, she knew exactly what to say. And she knew she wasn't alone anymore. 1 month later, the boardroom of Vostek Corporation was filled with tension. 12 board members sat around the long mahogany table, lawyers, investors, men in expensive suits who had spent decades building fortunes on other people's work. At the head of the table sat Isabel Voss. She looked different now, stronger. Her shoulders were back. Her eyes were clear, but inside her heart was racing. The chairman, Gregory Hartwell, leaned forward. His voice was condescending. Miss Voss, we've been patient with you, but the numbers don't lie. The company needs experienced leadership. Your father, God rest his soul, would have wanted what's best for Vostek. And what's best is selling my shares to you, Isabel asked calmly. We're offering you a very generous price, another board member chimed in. You'd never have to work again. You could live comfortably, travel, enjoy your life. While you destroy everything my father built, Isabel said. Hartwell's smile didn't reach his eyes. We're preserving his legacy. You're too emotional to see that. Emotional, Isabel repeated. She stood up slowly. You're right, I am emotional. I'm emotional about the fact that this company was built on the principle of respecting the people who work here, not exploiting them. Miss Voss, I'm not finished, she said, her voice steady and strong. My father made mistakes. He knew that. But he also knew that a company is only as good as the integrity of the people running it. She pulled out a folder, placed it on the table. 3 years ago, this company fired a man named Daniel Ward. He saved a coworker's life, and you fired him to avoid bad press. The room went silent. That's ancient history, Hartwell said dismissively. No, Isabel said. It's the truth, and the truth matters. She walked to the door and opened it. Daniel Ward stepped into the boardroom. The whispers started immediately. Daniel wore a simple button-down shirt and jeans. He looked out of place among the suits, but he walked in with quiet confidence. Isabel gestured to him. This is Daniel Ward, the man you called a liability, the single father who works 2 jobs to support his daughter, the man who teaches integrity without saying a word. Hartwell's face reddened. Miss Voss, this is highly inappropriate. You want to talk about inappropriate? Isabel's voice rose. Let's talk about how you pressured my father to fire good people to protect stock prices. Let's talk about how you're trying to push me out so you can gut this company and sell it for parts. That's a serious accusation, one of the lawyers said. Then sue me, Isabel shot back. But first, let's put it to a vote right here, right now. Who believes this company should be run with integrity? And who believes it should be run for profit at any cost? The room erupted in chaos. Hartwell slammed his hand on the table. This is absurd. We're not voting on feelings. No, Daniel said quietly. Everyone stopped talking. Daniel stepped forward. His voice was calm, measured. You're voting on whether you believe people matter, he said. I was fired because I made a choice to save someone's life. And that told me everything I needed to know about what this company valued. He looked directly at Hartwell. But Isabel's father spent his last years regretting that decision. He wanted to make it right. He didn't get the chance, but she does. Daniel turned to Isabel. You don't need me here. You already know what to do. You've always known. You just needed to believe in yourself. Isabel's eyes glistened with tears, but she didn't cry. Not here, not now. She looked around the table. I'm calling for a vote of confidence, she said. Either you support my leadership and the values my father truly believed in, or you can leave. I won't sell. I won't back down. And I won't let this company become something he would be ashamed of. The room was silent. Then slowly, one board member raised their hand in support, then another, then another. When the votes were counted, Isabel had won. Barely, but she had won. Hartwell stood up, his face twisted with anger. This isn't over. Yes, Isabel said calmly. It is. He stormed out. 2 other board members followed. The remaining board members stayed. Some looked impressed. Others looked uncertain. But they stayed. After the meeting, Isabel and Daniel stood in the empty boardroom. You did it, Daniel said softly. We did it, Isabel corrected. She turned to him. You taught me something my father tried to tell me, but I wasn't ready to hear. Integrity isn't about being perfect. It's about choosing to do the right thing even when it costs you everything. Daniel smiled. Your father would be proud. I hope so, she whispered. For the first time in years, the White House on the Hill didn't feel so empty anymore. 1 year later, Daniel opened a small electronics repair shop on the corner of 5th and Main. Nothing fancy, just a simple storefront with a hand-painted sign that read, Ward Tech Repairs. Business was steady, enough to support Ella, enough to feel proud of what he'd built. But the best part? Isabel visited often. She'd stop by after work, bring coffee, play cards with Ella, help organize inventory. She never acted like a billionaire CEO. She acted like a friend. Ella adored her. She called Isabel Izzy and made her laugh in ways the boardroom never could. One night, Daniel tucked Ella into bed. She looked up at him with sleepy eyes. Dad, is Izzy going to be my mom someday? Daniel smiled gently. Why do you ask that, sweetheart? Because she looks at you the way you look at me, like you're her favorite person. Daniel kissed her forehead. Get some sleep, kiddo. But as he walked to his own room, Ella's words stayed with him. At 2 a.m, his phone buzzed. Daniel picked it up. A message from Isabel. His heart skipped. Memories of that first call flooded back. He opened the message. If you hadn't answered that night, I don't know if I'd still be here. I was so lost, so tired of pretending to be strong. You gave me something I thought I'd lost forever. Hope. Daniel read on. You didn't just save my life that night. You taught me how to live it, how to stand up for what matters, how to believe that I'm worth more than my last name. His eyes stung with tears. I know you probably think I'm being dramatic, texting you at 2 a.m, but I wanted you to know something. 6 words you said to me changed everything. Daniel scrolled down. You said, thank you for still being here. Those 6 words reminded me that my life had value, that someone cared if I lived or died, not because of my money, not because of what I could do for them, but because I was human, and humans matter. Daniel wiped his eyes. So thank you, Daniel, for answering a wrong number, for staying when you could have left, for seeing me when everyone else only saw a name. The message ended with, I hope you're asleep. But I couldn't wait until morning to say this. You're the best person I know. The next morning, Isabel arrived at the shop. She was carrying a folder. Her eyes were bright. I have something to show you, she said. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Should I be worried? She smiled, Just open it. Inside was a proposal, a scholarship fund for children of single parents. I want to help kids like Ella, Isabel said softly. Kids whose parents work multiple jobs just to get by. Kids who deserve a chance. Daniel's throat tightened. Isabel, this is incredible. I want you to help me run it, she said. You know what it's like. You can make sure we're helping the right people. I don't know anything about running a foundation. Neither did I, Isabel said with a laugh. But you taught me that doing the right thing is more important than knowing the right things. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't the broken woman he'd found in that White House a year ago. She was strong, confident, alive. Okay, he said. Let's do it. Isabel's face lit up. Really? Really? She hugged him, tight, like she was holding on to something precious. When she pulled back, her eyes were misty. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. Because you gave me a reason to keep going when I had none. That afternoon, the three of them stood outside the shop. Isabel, Daniel, and Ella. Together, they planted a small tree in the sidewalk planter, a cherry blossom. Why a cherry blossom? Ella asked. Because, Isabel said, kneeling down to Ella's level, cherry blossoms bloom even after the coldest winters. They remind us that beautiful things can grow from hard times. Ella smiled. I like that. Daniel watched them, his daughter, and the woman who had become family. The morning sun broke through the clouds. Golden light spilled across the street. Somewhere in the distance, a phone rang, but this time it wasn't a wrong number. It was exactly the right one. Sometimes a wrong call in the middle of the night isn't a mistake. It's fate reaching out when we need it most, because the right person doesn't always come into your life the way you expect. Sometimes they come at 2 a.m, through tears, through desperation, through a number dialed by shaking hands. And sometimes answering that call doesn't just save one life, it saves 2. Because compassion isn't just about helping others. It's about reminding ourselves that we're all worth saving. Even when the world has turned its back, even when hope feels impossible, someone might just answer, and everything changes. If you believe that sometimes a single act of kindness in the middle of the night can change 2 lives forever, if this story touched your heart and reminded you that compassion still exists in this world, then please leave a comment below telling us about a time someone answered when you needed them most. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. And don't forget to subscribe to TT Healing Tales and turn on notifications so you never miss our stories of hope, redemption, and the power of human connection. Because we believe that every wrong number might just be the right call at the right time.